can see that the participants are joining in. So we will start it.
Sure.
Hello, everyone. Hi, good morning. Pleasure to welcome you all again for another session in the Train the Trainer series. This is our fifth session in the series, and today we have with us Anand Kapoor. He's the Group CIO of Straive. And just to give a gist about who he is, he has over 20 years of experience in IT and business impact transformation. Uh, some of his areas of expertise. And in his 20 years of experience, he has worked in IT project management, risk management, global delivery, and he has held significant roles in multiple organizations like Antioch, WNS Global Services, and so on. And he's skilled in digital transformation, security strategy, and he also spends his time mentoring startups. So today we have him with us. He's come up with a good session on cybersecurity. So it will touch upon the basic concepts as well as some insights about how you can use this in your colleges for your students, as well as understanding what trends are happening in this space. Uh, so over to you, Anand. I'll also copy paste his LinkedIn profile if anybody wants to connect with him in the future. Also, you can connect with him. Over the session, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hands, or you can also drop your questions in the chat box or the Q&A box so that Anand can take it up as the session progresses. Over to you, Anand.
All right. Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I hope everyone can hear me well and see me well. And like Kavya mentioned, uh, I'm very delighted and very happy to be here for a variety of reasons. Um, One, obviously, cybersecurity and IT is close to my heart, but more importantly, and something that probably Kavya does not know, that I am an educator's son myself. My mother is a teacher who still teaches and has been teaching for the past 30 years. So for me, um, this is special. So thank you for taking out time to talk to me this morning. And you know, if you have any questions, I don't know how the webinar is set up. If you could interrupt, but if you have any questions, if you have doubts, feel free to reach out to me even post the session. Kavya, since now my attention's on the screen, so if somebody's posing question, let's just interrupt
Sure, sure.
as well.
Yeah.
All right. So a little about Strive before we proceed, and to give you a little background. Strive, and you will notice that we spell Strive differently and pronounce Strive differently. Strive here, because our focus is a lot on AI, and we're into data analytics and AI and adaptive design and a lot of digitalized operations. Um, you got a 40-year-old history in Philippines and India. And just to give you context, anything that has to do with research content that has to do with STEM, right? Chances are the books that you consume in your colleges, in your universities, we've had a hand in creating some of them. 20% of the world's science passes through our doors. 2 out of 5 US students use our solutions in either edtech or K-12 education or content or otherwise to uh, you know, uh, through indirect means through our customers to sort of consume this. 30% of the US states use our solutions for K-12. Outside of education and content, we also work with firms in the ESG space, capital markets, insurance compliance, and of course, biochemical information. Um, so all of you teach computer science, so I don't need to tell you how critical data and AI has become, and our solutions are focused at AI powered adaptation of the enterprise of our customer environments. We've got offices in Chennai, in Pondicherry, in Trichy. Outside of Tamil Nadu, we've got set up in Hyderabad, in Bangalore, in Mumbai, in the NCR region, and in Calcutta. And outside of India, we're present in Vietnam, Nicaragua, Philippines, the United States, United Kingdom, of course. Um, so that's a little bit about the firm. And but today we're going to talk more about how the future of cybersecurity looks. What can we do in terms of education there, right? Trends, career pathways, and as I was collecting my thoughts for this, right, we've tried to focus content and thoughts around how the field of cybersecurity is evolving and what the latest trends are, and how, most importantly, we can prepare our students for successful careers in this very critical space. Right? Brief introduction, and first off, thank you once again for being here. Right? We'll talk about the basics of cybersecurity. We'll explore current market trends. We'll talk about job opportunities. We'll review what tools and software and what practical methods are available for learning. I'll also try and talk through some real world applications and address common challenges that I think, looking at my mother and other educators, some common challenges that educators may face. Right? The world's only going to become a lot more digital, and cybersecurity will become increasingly more important. Right? So it's very, very crucial that we equip our students with the knowledge and skills that they need to protect data and systems from cyber threats. I mean, it's both personal as well as a potential job opportunity. Right? Let's get to the basics of cybersecurity. Right? Cybersecurity, as the word sort of implies, involves protecting systems, networks, data from digital attacks. Right? The key concepts always the fundamental of cybersecurity is something called the CIA triad. No, it does not mean the spy agency in the US, but it goes to confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Those are the three fundamentals on which we build a cybersecurity solution. Right? It has to maintain confidentiality, which ensures that sensitive information is accessed only by authorized individuals. Right? It has to maintain integrity, which means maintaining accuracy and completeness of data, and of course availability. Right? I can lock everything up and say, hey, nothing is available and hence it's secure, but that's pointless. So availability ensures that data and systems are accessible when needed. Right? These three principles, and as long as you keep these three principles in mind, at heart, as an educator, as a teacher, as a student, as a practitioner of cybersecurity, you can form the foundation to any cybersecurity practice. Right? And cybersecurity is crucial for protecting sensitive information, for ensuring functioning of our critical infrastructure, right? And for maintaining, most importantly, public trust in digital systems. Right? There are questions that people raise about, for example, public systems like Aadhaar and a whole host of in the Western world around NHS, or in the US around social security systems. And it's important that that public trust is not eroded, because um, that's the bedrock of our economies functioning well. And more importantly, this information is critical, and hence you need good cybersecurity warriors to protect this, because the next war or the next world conflict will be online, will be it's actually fought every day online. Right? It's more online than it is on the ground. So that's very critical. Right? It's a rapidly evolving field, and we've seen a significant rise in cyber threats and attacks over the few years. There are a lot of high profile data breaches, ransomware attacks, and other cyber incidents that are very common. And nobody is safe. Corporations have been hit, governments have been hit, large institutions have been hit, common people on the street have been hit. It's not like you and I haven't heard of Paytm scams and UPI scams, and people calling in and extorting money over over WhatsApp or over email. Right? And this is why the cybersecurity industry is very, very important. It's growing very rapidly. And see, from an organization or from a government point of view, it's very easy to invest heavily in cybersecurity solutions to protect their assets. And this is where our students come in, right? Because this growth will lead to a higher demand of skilled cybersecurity professionals, right? Simple roles like the roles that are most in demand today that I would sort of hire personally in my job are security analysts, penetration testers, security architects, and all of these roles require a very strong understanding of cybersecurity principles and a hands-on experience with a lot of relevant tools and technologies, right? And we'll talk about it as we go along, right? So it's very critical that our syllabus today integrates cybersecurity into our education, right? And so that we prepare our students as they pass out of universities and colleges and are ready for challenges for digital world. And let's look at some of the cybersecurity curriculum that we're teaching in colleges. It's been many years since I've been inside or behind a desk. That most, I would imagine that most topics include intrusion detection or database security or hardware security or banner grabbing or operating system fingerprinting techniques, right? Or intrusion prevention or digital forensics, cryptography, network security, attack and countermeasures, reconnaissance, and multiple cybersecurity concepts within the triad, right? That have to do with either risk management or breach management or threat management or attacks or exploits, right? But they're more, in my opinion, right? And as we see students come in, there are a lot more areas that could do with some depth and some practical insights. Otherwise, you lead to learning on the job, right? You could, for example, to use tools like snot for intrusion detection, right? Or look at practical desktop publishing or deep further detailed reconnaissance techniques, right? You could use tools like fail to ban to look at scanning log files and figuring stuff out. We could apply artificial intelligence in cybersecurity, and that also sort of provides more practical exposure, right? A key area that I would see emerging is this whole online and social media security, right? Or on the corporate side, understanding how IDSs and IPSs work, which are intrusion detection systems and intrusion prevention systems, right? Or how we can use this network security or data security to avoid vulnerabilities. Or well, there's new stuff coming around, which is hopefully what students will need further ahead, which is quantum cryptography or something called a hyperledger fabric, right? And as you study more in cryptography and cyber forensics or in malware analysis, you know student, it will be much more beneficial for such students, because they are a lot more ready for the world. I mean, see, today we are looking at, hey, do you know cryptocurrency or do you know ethical hacking, right? But the future will talk about how well do you understand cyber forensics, or how well do you understand hyperledger fabric and stuff like that, right? So that's going to be critical. Some tools, and we got some of these from the questionnaire that Kavya would have circulated earlier. But let's discuss some essential tools and software that the cybersecurity industry is currently using, and if we can integrate them into teaching itself, right? There is a whole networking academy that Cisco offers. It's sort of a university, digital university format that can be used. Or cybersec labs offer such tools, right? Or softwares like packet tracer. Now these tools are excellent for network simulation, they're excellent for practical learning, right? You can use these as great education setups for students, right? There are resources like Idea Lab, there's MATLAB, there's AR/VR labs, there are robotic labs and deep learning labs, and all of them provide a lot of advanced learning environments, right? Then there are platforms like Try Hack Me, right? They offer interactive cybersecurity training, right? Hands-on challenges. You can keep trying in those labs and look at challenges. But what's important is, if today I'm hiring somebody, right, I'd say, hey, do you know Wireshark? Can you do some network analysis? Can you understand network protocols? Right. The more students are able to set up these labs and environments for practical learning, it's better, it's more crucial, because what these labs will let students do is practice these tools using real world scenarios in with hands-on experiences. One of the, I mean, I didn't benefit this in university when I was studying, but when I started working, one of my mentors at work used to do a big and a bog group. Well, the intent was for us youngsters at that point in time. Now, this is a good 26 years ago. Every weekend, he would call us into work and say, hey, I'll set up pizzas on me, come in, we'll do a big and a bog group. So the big group would come up with an idea and the bog group would shut it down. And the same thing can happen inside of technology. So the big group, you could do a blue team and a red team, and it becomes a good healthy competition between the red team that could attack or try and breach a lab environment, and the blue team has to defend it. So they become very interesting approaches, right? And as many hands-on learning techniques that we can do for teaching cybersecurity, it's better, because lab exercises and simulations is what will allow students to apply theoretical knowledge in practical scenarios, right? We can all teach the TCP/IP stack and the 7 layers of TCP/IP, but setting up a virtual lab where students can participate in network security and attack simulations, right, or a capture the flag competition, is a great way of engaging students, right? It does not have to be a very complex thing. It doesn't have to be too many computers. You could potentially do this with just two computers in a lab, right? So these competitions involve solving a lot of these cybersecurity challenges. They're educational, um, they're engaging, right? The other option is to look at online resources. So there are these MOOCs, which are massively online uh, courses or certifications from places like Cybrary or Coursera and Udemy. You must have heard of Coursera and Udemy, of course, but there is something called Cybrary, which only looks at a library a library of cyber resources, right? And these provide comprehensive learning materials and opportunities for students to gain valuable skills and certifications. Right? I mean, it's worth its weight in gold. So that's very critical. I can't see any questions, but I hope there are questions around this. Okay. We'll talk about some industry applications. So not just, potentially not just being hired at where I work, but there are applications across multiple industries, right? Finance, healthcare, government. So in the finance sector, the cybersecurity team would protect sensitive financial data, ensuring integrity of transactions. Banks use a lot of encryption and multi-factor authentication to secure customer data. All of that is built on the back of a cybersecurity professional, not a cybersecurity professional, but obviously several. Similarly, healthcare organizations, right? I mean, the US has something called HIPAA, which is a law that looks at protecting healthcare information. Our IT Act is fast moving, in a similar space, but healthcare organizations really need cybersecurity professionals. Again, you're protecting patient data, you have to protect availability of critical health services, because I could potentially bring down with malicious intent. I could bring down a hospital network, right? So a cybersecurity professional is very, very critical there to protect that. You have to have secure networks to store and transmit patient records, right? Everybody's heard of, for example, WannaCry, right? It's a yeah, it's a it's a ransomware attack, and how it's reduced, that toolkit, the use of that toolkit has reduced, is because of effective cybersecurity measures, right? And the more we study these case studies in class, right? The better the students will become in saying, hey, how can I apply cybersecurity practices in real world scenarios, in being prepared for cyber threats, right? um, Now you'll say, and I'm sure you might just turn around and say, hey Anand, but you know schools, classrooms, public school information, are challenged. We've got a limitation on resources, right? We've got lack of access to advanced tools. There is limited hands-on experience. It's tough to keep up. These are valid questions for any educator. These are valid questions for any school, college, to sort of worry about, right? Uh, and and I get it, but and think of it, right? And then let's sort of list our challenges down, and then we'll talk about how we can address these unique set of challenges. And I'll especially keep tier 2 locations in mind, right? So mm, we've got what, lack of access to advanced tools and resources, right? There may be budget or infrastructure challenges around supporting high-end cybersecurity labs, right? Then of course you may have too many students, so limited hands-on experience. Now this, before you teach it to the students, the educators themselves need this hands-on experience, right? So without practical exposure, it's very difficult to grasp these complexities of cybersecurity, right? You have to have basics and all the way to real world application. And if most of the time is spent in class with classroom work, and there's a whole lot of work around it, right? So that's a challenge. So we need to ensure that there is hands-on experience, first for educators and then for students. And of course, this field of cybersecurity is rapidly evolving. You're busy for 6 months in one school term, newer technologies have emerged, newer trends have emerged, and it's important for educators to stay current there. Then of course there's a gap between theory and practical. And forgive me if I say this, but traditional teaching methods may not sufficiently prepare students for real world cybersecurity challenges, right? And there's also this lack of collaboration, right? Or network opportunities that educators should have, which brings best industry trends and practices to them, right? This isolation is can potentially damage our students, right? Because then if our educators don't have relevant and up to date education, the students won't, right? So I've tried to sort of summarize what we could do for each of them. Right? So in terms of lack of access to advanced tools, there are low cost, I won't say free, but low cost online resources and tools. Right? There are platforms like Try Hack Me, I told you. Then there's Hack the Box. Right? These offer interactive cybersecurity challenges and labs that can be accessed from anywhere with internet. And that's one thing we've got to sort of hand out. Our country does have easy access to internet everywhere, right? Then of course there are, to improve this whole hands-on experience, think about setting up open source tools, right? I mean, yes, VMware is expensive, but there are softwares like VirtualBox. Now you can create isolated environments where you can provide a safe space for your students to practice cybersecurity techniques, like learning how to drive, like learning how to shoot. Please remember that the best way to practice cybersecurity techniques is in a closed box environment. And it's very important that we do that, because doing it in the open world is not just risky and dangerous, it's also illegal. So it's very important that these cybersecurity techniques are done in closed environments, and these isolated environments um, are best created using these virtual setups, because that gives us maximum bang for the buck, that gives us maximum advantage, or especially when we have limited resources, right? And I'm hoping, Kavya, we set up a lot more of these webinars, right? And teachers, if you could participate in online courses, look at industry certifications, they'd really help you. It's not just um, those certifications aren't just designed for working professionals like me. They're equally important for our educators, right? And that bridges the gap between theory and practical, right? The more hands-on activities you guys do, the more hands-on activities your students will do, right? Think lab exercises, think simulations, think solving for real world case studies, right? All of these will encourage students to look at competitions or hackathons that provide very valuable practical experience, right? We'll try and figure out a method where a lot of educators in the country should be able to join professional organizations and online communities, right? There are already free setups, right? There's LinkedIn offers the ability for all you educators to connect with each other, with industry professionals and with peers. There are forums like Reddit, and that has the ability for you to talk and exchange ideas and notes. uh, we should also figure out a way where there is collaboration with local businesses and cybersecurity firms locally, right? So that we can do more guest lectures or internships or practical projects for our students, right? I think some large corporations as well, the Cisco's and Intels of the world offer. Cisco, I know for sure, offers a networking academy, which has a lot of resources and training for educators to enhance the existing cybersecurity curriculum. Um, so, the ones that I would highly recommend, and I've been repeating through my conversation all throughout, is, for example, the Networking Academy by Cisco. There is a CyberSec Labs. It's a platform that provides labs and exercises for hands-on learning. There is TryHackMe, again, an online platform for interactive cybersecurity challenges. Then, of course, these online platforms, so the Coursera, the Udemy's, and the Cybraries of the world for courses and certifications in cybersecurity, right? There are now there's something else. So now when you start seeing your own interest or your students' interests focused on this, join some professional organizations. There's CompTIA, there is ISCA, there is ISC, right? These organizations give members access to a lot of resources, to a lot of certifications, and from a student's point of view, a lot of professional development opportunity, right? So that really helps. And of course, right, if you don't want to go the professional organization route, there are a lot of online communities and forums, right? So engage with communities on Reddit, on LinkedIn, on specialized forums, right, where you can connect with industry peers and professionals to talk about these things, right? If there are further questions, I'm sort of happy to take them.
Anand, can you just give a few cases from your own experience about how you have detected or prevented any data breaches? That will help the audience as well.
Sure. So some key cases that some popular ones that come to mind. So traditionally, what happens is that a lot of folks don't publish the cybersecurity breaches. They don't publish cybersecurity breaches because that leads to in a lot of ways, um, um, how do you say, in a lot of ways, right? It's loss of face. It's also um,
Yes.
inviting to litigation, etc. But there are a lot of big ones that we should talk about, the ones that are really really known. So think of, for example, the SolarWinds hack, right? And this was really really sophisticated. SolarWinds is a company that most of you may know that provides IT management software, right? So the attacker got into the SolarWinds source code and introduced a malicious code in their Orion software. Right now, any because SolarWinds, the nature of SolarWinds is that, hey, I need to monitor all my devices. So your SolarWinds server traditionally would have access to every resource in the company, right? Or at least be reachable to every resource in the company. So they inserted that malicious code and deep into that code, like several months and quarters away earlier, and nobody detected it. And then when it was rolled out, it was sort of exploited in the open. And 2020 saw a huge scurry of this, and SolarWinds saw a huge drop in credibility and in in terms of losses and government inquiries, etc. That's really really famous. On In the US, there was something called Equifax. Actually, 2017 was another crazy year. We saw Equifax and WannaCry, right? So Equifax was this data breach where about data of about 147 million people, right? Think names, social security numbers, birth dates, addresses, driving licenses numbers, everything was exposed and made available on the dark web for sale. And that's really bad, right? Then WannaCry, we spoke about WannaCry. So it used to target uh, the Windows operating system, encrypt all your files, and then demand ransom payments using Bitcoin. So your money is not traceable, and there is no guarantee that the hacker will give you the key to decrypt your data. So if you've got data only in one location, it's either gone. So either you say, hey, I won't pay up and start from scratch, or you pay and you hope that that the um, that the attacker is going to give you the decryption key, and that always would not happen, right? And then this those are some really famous ones. Yahoo suffered two two significant data breaches, and this is a few years ago now, but 3 billion user accounts were compromised. uh, so that one was really really big. An interesting one, and I wouldn't call it a breach, but this is social media manipulation, right? Everybody's heard of the Cambridge Analytica scandal with Facebook, right? So a lot of personal data was harvested without user consent, and it was used for political advertising, for tracking people, um, for a lot of that. Closer to home, I don't know how many of you use this product called Big Basket to order stuff. In
Yes.
2020, Big Basket faced a data breach, and 20 million users stuff was put up down on the dark web. So I could potentially get people's email IDs, phone numbers, addresses, all their addresses. Now, as a result, Big Basket today no longer uses a password. It says one-time password login, right?
Right.
There's a few years ago, there used to be a very cool scanning product on the Android platform. Actually, it was both on Android and iPhone, called Cam Scanner. Cam Scanner had a malicious module, right? And Cam Scanner had, if memory serves me right, over 100 million downloads. Right now, it's no longer available on the Play Store, but that was one. A few years ago, Zomato had the same issue as Big Basket, right? Email addresses, hashed passwords were available on the dark web. Although Zomato says no payment information was ever compromised, there is no way we can know, right? Recently, GeoMart has had a customer data leak. Paytm has had a customer data leak. Air India has had a customer data leak with on their Sita platform. So people's names, passport information, contact details were all out, right? Um, I don't know how many of you remember. Now it's been some time ago, but in 2018 there was a leak even in the Aadhaar database. So I believe there was some investigative journalists that discovered that you could access Aadhaar data by just paying a nominal fee. But that's a breach, right? Um, who else? There's a Pune-based bank called Cosmos Bank, and
Yes.
I believe hackers sort of got into the bank's network using the ATM switch server, and they cloned banks' debit cards and then withdrew money from many countries. It's close to 100 crores that sort of went. So we can go on and on. There are
Right.
several such.
So which brings us to a question, Anand. So, what would you suggest as best practices that both organizations and individuals can follow, or to sort of, at least to some extent, save themselves from such kind of, uh, whether it's hacks or otherwise, data, how to protect data and themselves?
So for organizations, I would say hire the students that these educators will train, right? uh, but it's more it's a lot more easier to say that, but it's a lot more complex to build a system. So I'll break this down into two parts, right? And a very long time ago, somebody said it's always the simplest things that you do right, everything else will follow. Whether it's health, whether it's cybersecurity, it's always the same. So I'll break it down into two parts, right? Think of it as what organizations should do versus what individuals should do. Okay, so organizations is very simple, right? You implement strong security policies, you conduct regular security audits and assessments, right? You build on employee training and awareness, ensure that organizations use multi-factor authentication, and ensure that softwares are updated and patched, that all sensitive data both in transit and rest should be encrypted, and that we segment our network. You segment the network so that if there's a breach, you're able to contain it in that segment, right? And not go from segment to segment. Simplest example is a lot of universities and colleges have a flat LAN. If I'm on one computer, I can potentially go everywhere. But if I told you that, hey, you've got to store your question papers on a different computer and ensure that that computer is not accessible from another VLAN, right? Easy. Or if you've seen ship hull design, you will notice that if you see a 3D of a ship's hull, hull is
Yeah,
the bottom of the ship, right? You will notice that there are compartments. The reason for that compartments are so that if there's a breach in one hull, only that hull is compromised, only that section is compromised, not the entire ship. Right? The same way we create VLANs or network segmentation, and so that you're able to contain stuff. Most importantly, and WannaCry has taught this even at an individual level. You back up data regularly. You keep backups of critical data, encrypt them, keep them on a separate location so that in case of a ransomware attack or a data loss, you have that available. Implement a intrusion detection system, an intrusion prevention system, right? An IDPS. You monitor your network traffic for suspicious activity, and you keep it updated, right? And this is why companies need cybersecurity professionals or security professionals, right? Some of the recent incidents that we hear in the industry have come through sorry have come through remote access being sort of exploited. So ensure that your remote access solution, right, is secure. And we saw a lot of this remote accesses being violated or misused during this whole work from home and hybrid setup that organizations have. And most importantly, have an incident response plan. So if you develop and regularly update an incident response plan, you will be able to respond to cyber incidents well, right? As they say, the more you sweat in practice, the less you bleed in war. You've
right.
got to assume that. Now, on an individual basis, right, for us as individuals, what you, me, all of us can do on is to have strong and unique passwords, right? Personally, I do something called concentric circles, or well, for those who are familiar with mythology, like a chakravyuh. So my easiest password, what I would potentially give to people when they come home to say, "Hey, what's your Wi-Fi password?" Right, is the outermost password. I would not, use it for anything else.
Right.
So the more secure passwords are further in, further in, further in, things that I would not share, things that are not common to me, things that people will say, "Hey, I know this guy's birthday." because
Mm.
most
Yeah.
most of these compromises happen by picking up snippets of information. Hey, this is what his pet name is, or hey, his dog's called this.
Okay.
Maybe it's a the password's a wordplay on the dog or on your partner, right? Your partner's birth date is this. It could be that. So have passwords that are unique, that have nothing to do with you. If you have a password as password 123, it is as good as leaving the door open. If you have a password that is a wordplay on your name and your date of birth, somebody who knows you will take advantage of that. The second aspect, enable two-factor authentication. Right? It's a pain. I'd agree. Right? You have to go search your phone or wherever a second device to say yes. I will put an OTP when I log in. But for critical things, it's worth it. It's well worth it. More and more banks are now mandating this. Right?
Yes.
Personally, we've got to be very cautious of phishing scams. Right? Every few months there is a new scam. Every few months, right? So you be very vigilant. Where have you got that email from? Where is the message from? If an email from a bank does not look how it is supposed to be, does not. I mean, forget it. If I get an email from a bank and it calls for an action, I don't do it at all. I don't click on a link if it comes from a bank, because anything can be compromised, and the assumption is that the other person is already compromised. That's the safest assumption to make, right? It's how you drive. It's called defensive driving. You assume that the other person is going to make a mistake, so you be careful, and that's the way around it. Basic stuff. Ensure your home PCs or your personal computers are have an anti-malware software, have an antivirus software, that your software is updated, right? Your personal devices, your mobile phones should have a password, not easy to guess, should be secured with biometric authentication. You could use a thumbprint, you could use a face, but whatever, right? That's the security that you need. And honestly, avoid public Wi-Fi. Right? Remember, there are no free lunches. If somebody is offering you free Wi-Fi in a cafe, at the railway station, there is someone sitting to take advantage. Maybe it's not the person who's offering it, but someone else will. Okay. Monitor your bank and card transactions in this age of contactless. Well, it's a great boon, and all of us use it. It's the small amounts that you don't realize. There has been this new scam. People will walk around with contactless readers and they'll bump against you and will take 1 rupee, 5 rupees, 10 rupees. You don't realize that's, in the grand scheme of things. I have 10,000 rupees in my account, 1 rupee gone. Okay, big deal. No, that it's the small transactions that tell you, hey, this was the weakness. You were carrying your contactless card enabled, open somewhere, or in a place where somebody can do a bump contact with you. What
Yes.
is a bump contact? I don't have my card here, but everybody knows what a contactless card
Yes.
is.
Yes.
Now, if you carry it in a normal wallet, and it works on something called NFC, near field communication, in a crowded metro or a train, if I stand very close to you with a contactless reader or with an NFC reader, I can potentially read the card. So two things can happen. I can read the card to be able to clone everything barring the CVV, or better yet, I can make money there and then by doing one quick transaction, and it'll be like 1 rupee, 2 rupee, 5 rupee. You by the time you read your SMS or that bank alert, I'm already off the train or metro, right? So you've got to keep that very carefully. So, and the one way is fine, this can happen. So you keep monitoring your statements. Then the best thing, limit personal information shared online, right? Being online is a lot of fun. You get to learn a lot, you get to see a lot, but you've got to limit the information. And, you know, uh, we do a lot of these practicals with people. There's this guy online who people throw challenges to, which is, here's a photo of me, tell me where I am.
Mm.
If you keep open public profile, if you keep your social media profile open or in public, it's very easy for someone to target you. You can People come to know who your friends are, where you hang, what cafes you go to, who's at home. Sometimes people are not interested in you. People are looking at your background, and by people I mean someone with a malicious intent, right? Is looking at your background, what's on your wall, where is this place, can I read can I see a certificate, is there a password hidden somewhere? People put up, and this has happened very often, people put up boarding passes when they're saying, hey, we're off for a holiday. Okay. That little QR code has all the information that someone needs. And you will notice that only last month, Indigo's put this thing that you need a one-time password to make edits to the bookings. You know why? Because it's so easy for me, if I know your last name and if I know the PNR, for me to alter your booking, for me to say I'm going to cancel this booking and take the credit and use it elsewhere. So very, very, very critical to limit personal information online. Okay.
We have some questions.
Sure. Shoot.
So some of the questions are on certification. So one question is on what cybersecurity certification will be useful for computer science students. Another has asked about CCNA, how to study for that. And another question which is on there's another question on cybersecurity courses. What will be the primary objectives? I think these are in the similar territory. I think you can take it
Hmm.
together.
Let me also look at the chat. I'll stop sharing so that I can see the chat. Um, okay. All right. So let me start with the first one. Kavya, just keep me honest if I miss a question.
Sure.
Now, um, let's do let's do certifications, and I'll tell you why. Because certifications itself is very vast. Okay. We'll break it up into multiple parts. Now, entry level certifications, right? If I'm looking at a cybersecurity professional at an entry level, I'd look at someone who's done a certified ethical hacker. Easy to do. What it does is it focuses on teaching the student how to identify and address a vulnerability in system, and it uses the same tools and knowledge that a malicious hacker would do, right? So you could you could go either ways with that. Now, the other thing is the other thing that you could do is something called a CompTIA certification. A CompTIA certifications are it's basically called a CompTIA, right? And it's a security plus certification, also entry level. Covers basic security concepts, network security, compliance threats. Again, widely recognized in the industry, right? And they have security plus, and they have got CompTIA cybersecurity analyst, which is called CISA plus. Basically, it's an acronym CYSA. It's called CISA plus, right? Again, focused on threat detection and data analysis and securing and protecting applications and systems, right? This is the CISA plus is a very good gap between what is entry level versus an intermediate cybersecurity role, because it starts to focus on defense and incident response, right? So think of it as for security firms like Mandiant would need somebody with a CISA plus, right? Now there are some intermediate courses, right? On the information security side, there's certified information system security professionals. Sorry, it's a little bit of a mouthful. It's called CISSP, and the other one is called CISM. Now these have been around for a good 20 years, and I think how CISSP says, we've got 7 or 8 domains of cybersecurity. So risk management, security, asset security, security engineering, and it covers all of them. And the CISP SSP is the global standard for cybersecurity expertise, right? Case in point, my head of cybersecurity at my firm is a CISSP and a CISM. Now, what's the difference? The CISSP is Certified Information Security System Security Professional, versus CISM is uh, Certified Information Security Manager. So one's an auditor, the other is an auditee, but both are critical. And well, they have been around for a while. What's becoming even more important, especially as you look for organizations, is to look at things like CCSP, same organization, but CCSP is Certified Cloud Security Professional. Right. So that's again, as cloud computing becomes more prevalent, much more valuable, especially for cloud environments. Now, this is where the game changes. Now, so far we've done basic and intermediate. Now think of it as advanced level certifications that you should only do after you've been working in the field, you know, you enjoy it, you know this is your career for you, is to do things like and I make a lot of fun of offensive security certified professional. But this guy, or people who learn, who get this certification, they are taught penetration testing methodologies and tools. This requires a hands-on exam and is highly regarded, right, for practical and hands-on approach in cybersecurity. Okay. Then of course you've got CISA, which is the auditor version of the CISM, so Certified Information Systems Auditor, and you've got something called a Security Essentials, which is a GSEC. It's more UK oriented, but it does a lot of things like cloud security and cryptography. We can also specialize stuff. Right now you could get into, now depending on where your students get placed, let's say like my previous firm, which was a healthcare tech company, you could do a HCIS sorry HCISPP, which is a healthcare information security and privacy practitioner, focused on careers in the healthcare IT security, or something called a CSSA, which is a SCADA security architect. So which is focused on industrial control systems. Now, for those of your students that have an industrial bent, who see themselves on shop floors, or think companies like Honeywell, right? The SCADA security architect is a brilliant certification to do, because industrial control is going to become the bedrock of all large organizations as we mature as a country, and as we become a, have larger industries. Think refineries by Reliance, think petrochemical setups by the government, think large wind turbine setups, power plant setups, nuclear plant setups. All these guys need critical infrastructure security, and this is going to be very, very important. Then there are some emerging technologies that are coming up, right? With blockchain becoming very popular, certified blockchain professional, very nice. Blockchain technology, security implications, very critical. Or what I think there should be already on this world, but there is not, is a certified Internet of Things security practitioner, or an IoT SP, right? All our devices today, whether it is door locks to webcams to fridges and air conditioners, are IoT enabled. If we don't have a protection strategy for that, I could potentially use a weakness in one of these devices to get into your home network. And that's worse. So some of these are very, very important certifications. Kavya, what's the next question?
Yeah. So the next question is, how can I plan to stay updated with latest developments in cybersecurity to ensure that my teaching material is current?
So, what was the last movie any of you saw in the theater?
Sure. If
Dear, Ratnam, Romeo,
any,
Rebel,
pick any.
any, right? If you're up to date with movies, you can be up to date with this stuff. It's all online. Everything is available. Everything is available online. Look at Reddit, look at LinkedIn, look at, just read. Find a, there are great publications. The Wired magazine, so many. But the one thing that I have heart for, which people don't realize, is that being an educator is a tough job, right? Doing 8 hours of work at college or university, and then grading papers, and then lesson plans and prepping for stuff leaves you with very little time. So a good way my partner preps for things is by listening to podcasts. So on her morning walk or evening walks, she'd be listening to podcasts. It crunches your time while running errands, while doing things at home or in the kitchen. You can listen to podcasts, and that's there are a whole lot of podcasts in the cybersecurity space, but just generally in computer science, because no, sad to say, but and I'm sorry to generalize, but generally the cybersecurity specialists are geeks, and nobody listens to geeks, so they make their own podcasts so that people can hear their voices. So there are a lot of podcasts, right?
So I also do something. I just join on forums on Reddit. Uh, that helps me get updated on data science. So I think that's another thing that people can
Yeah,
do.
yeah, for sure. But I like this guy called Jack Rysider, right? He writes something called Darknet Diaries, or there's another popular one called Security Now, or mm, there's another one called Unsupervised Learning. Very very nice. But there are loads of these. If you like the social engineering aspect of it, there's something called the Social Engineer podcast. It is downright scary to realize how people can, using public information, get into your life, right? Some of these I don't listen to simply because I've got
It's
enough
scary.
to solve for, but they're very very relevant. Some If you want to prep something for a real world job, there's something called a CISO series podcast. A gentleman called David Spark hosts it, and they get a lot of CISOs on that for interviews with industry leaders. Any of these will do, but I'm saying you don't necessarily have to be a reader, because that takes time and focus.
Yes.
Listen while running, while going to work, any of these.
Okay. So there's another question on what are the roles and responsibilities of a CISO in an organization?
Oh,
I think that
uh,
pretty much I can think sums up what you had spoken about and roles and risk detection and all the
so
cases that you spoke about.
I'll, and especially my current organization, because I've had the privilege of building the entire IT organization ground up, right? I could I could sort of point that out. One of the things that we did was we separated the CISO's role from the IT org. So earlier, the current, the cybersecurity professional rolled up to me, and the first thing that we did was we said separate it. Why? I mean, he was my hire. He's, but the reason we separated it is because we need to have a maker checker balance. So the first role of a CISO is to be the checker to the maker that IT is. And I'm calling out this difference between the an information technology professional and a cybersecurity professional. As a cybersecurity professional, your job is only to develop a security policy and have the IT team implement it. So, ensure that your policy is aligned to industry standards, to regulations, but you say, here is the law. The IT team has to implement it, right? Then, of course, risk management, identifying and prioritizing security risks, cataloging them, right? Sometimes people say, I want access to this certain site, and the IT guy will get bulldozed over by saying, okay sir, yes sir, you need it. I mean, everywhere there are structures that we follow, but it's the cybersecurity guy who says, sorry, this is a risk. If you want it, I will catalog it as a risk you can justify, right? Should an incident occur, what is the incident response? So maintaining the incident response plan is the CISO's job. They will lead, he or her will lead the response team during an incident, right? Compliance and governance, especially with IT Act coming in, or especially with firms that have to deal with a lot of firms in the West, right? There is United States California Data Privacy Act. There is the GDPR there is
In
the
the
HIPAA.
same lines, there is the DPDP Act. Somebody's question is also on that,
Sure.
uh, and it's
What's
how to comply with that. So still, it's being. I mean, it is passed and it is going to be enacted, right? So if you
yeah.
can just throw some light on how to be compliant with these GDPR and DPDP and similar acts.
So, well, one easy way is, and generally the approach is to look at, um, you would rarely have a company or an environment that is um, operate in today's day and age operating only in a single environment. But like take our organization. I'll give you our example. We've taken a summary all the IT acts that are we are applicable to, because we work in different geographies and different countries and different laws apply, and taken the most stringent one. But the best way to do this is, right, you break your architecture into, what is the act, what are the amendments. Start, forget the DPD Act, start with the original Information Technology Act 2000. There have been subsequent amendments to it, right? Ensure that your people, which is your legal team, your compliance team, your IT staff, know the provisions and requirements of the act. One of the things that we do, and well, large corporations require this by law, but a lot of firms have what is called the chief compliance officer or a protection officer. Now, because of conflict of interest, the data protection officer should never come from the infosec or IT teams. But a great candidate for a data protection officer is your legal counsel. So if you're a company or a setup big enough to have a separate legal counsel, even if it's an outsourced legal counsel, right, they can become your DPO. Then you start looking at security policies, right? You will have people, cybersecurity professionals, students that are passing out, who can write policies that say, here's how data protection will work, here's how access control will work, here's how incident response will work, and then we will audit this. So let's say you're a school, right, and your school has a security policy of password being reset over a period of time, or now you can audit that, saying, are passwords being reset on time, right? So you first implement a policy, then you audit yourself to how well you comply to the policy, right? Then of course, you have to, one of the key tenets of the IT Act today is and will be of the DPD as well, is data encryption. So ensure you have data encryption, your storage is secure, you have a access control list, ACL, on your critical data, restricted access. You cannot have a computer or a system or anything without with an easy password or with no. I have seen environments where there is no password. Hit enter, the system opens, right? That's, by the way, a violation. And I remember this section because I had a run in with somebody. This is the section 43A and 72A of the IT Act, because there is a compensation like the West for data security breaches, and if you fail to protect personal information. So ensure that there are measures to implement, that you're implementing to protect personal and sensitive data. And this is where audits come in. You need somebody else outside of you to audit, right? I need somebody else to look at me and say, hey, you put on weight, fatty, right? I'm not body shaming myself, but sometimes an outside in view is the best. So a regular audit is very critical. um, Obviously ensure all electronic transactions are secure. Use encryption, use digital signatures, use authentication methods, and ensure that your network is secure, right? No unauthorized access, no breaches. There's no way for you to find out if your network is open. So the minute you have a password and somebody is trying to unlock it again and again, and that password is getting locked, somebody's trying to hit you, right? There are procedures in the act already to report incidents to certain. Now, certain is Computer Emergency Response Team. Now, there is an Indian arm of it which is rolls up to the government. It's called the Indian Computer Emergency Response Team, CERT-IN. You've got computer emergency response teams for every country. It's become the norm, and there are fixed procedures in the act already to report these incidents. You're supposed to, by law, report these incidents, right? We don't we shrug it off, but that's not how it's supposed to be. Secure your IT infrastructure and update policies well. right? A common area of failure that I see with a lot of small corporations and entities is they'll tighten their own stuff, they'll clean their own house, but they will not do it with third parties. You have to ensure that your third party vendors comply with the act, that they
Right.
have the same security measures that you do. If your house is clean, ensure that your subcontractor, your vendor, their house is also clean. Another common thing people do: data retention and disposal. We give away machines as donation, as CSR drives, as oh, they are old now. Please ensure that you're retaining data. Uh, I think in this will require someone to look at the act. There are financial information needs to be retained for I think 7 or 10 years, and ensure that data is retained when you dispose of the asset. If you give away an old computer, keep the data with you and ensure you wipe it clean. So two parts to data retention and its disposal. One, you're keeping the data secure. Second, when you're giving away older assets, please ensure that you wipe them clean. Now, most importantly, incident response plan. When something happens, because something will happen always, right? um, what are you going to do? People should know what to do. People should know what their role is. If you're a college, if you're a university, if you're a organization, right? What will marketing do? What will legal do? What will HR do? What will IT do? Hell, IT will be busy fixing the breach. It's everybody else that has to take up their preset roles. Practice that. Once a year, we do what is called a tabletop exercise. We call all our leaders into a call despite their busy schedules. This is mandatory. We call all of them and say, we will do a scenario. Anand is on leave. The firm's been hit. What will happen? So somebody, it's like playing chess, or like, uh,
Many
pretending that,
different
yeah,
scenarios.
scenario building. It's interesting. It's fun, but it's also engaging. It keeps that muscle memory. You know, uh, um, as a child, when I was growing up, my father one day said, "Hey, my life insurance policy is kept here." And I went like, "Appa, why are you telling me that? I don't want to know this thing." No, he says, "You should know. You must know. If something happens, this is it." It's it's talking about the uncomfortable truths, whether it is to our children, whether it is to our students, whether it is to our staff, saying, if this were to happen, this is what it is. And we should all build that courage to be able to say, when things go wrong, and they will sometimes, here is what you're supposed to do. Courage under fire is all that is very important. Any
Well
other
said.
piece?
There's one other question. What cybersecurity tools would you think will trend in the coming years?
This answer will change every 6 months. uh, okay, let me try. So this is assuming your student is passing out, is graduating university or college in what, 2 years, 3 years, or something sooner. So the tools that we spoke about, some of them are evergreen, right? What so what would change is our focus will move towards, mm, okay, let me break this up into multiple parts, right? So firstly, our reliance on AI and machine learning will be significantly more. So the first tool that folks should be familiar with is how to make use of, um, you know of AI and of machine learning to adopt to a cybersecurity posture. Okay, that's rule number one. That's like ground level. That will not change. That's very critical. Okay, think of tools like dark trace or silence. Right? Then what's happening is we used to have something called EDR, which was, so when I was in college, we used to say, please get a good antivirus. The
Yeah.
next generation said, please get a good EDR. Now, the difference between an antivirus and an EDR, an antivirus only looks at virus. An EDR looks at detection and response for a malicious attack. It has now changed to something called an XDR, which is an extended detection and response. You get XDRs for individual PCs even, right? The XDR tools provide a holistic approach to threat and response, detection and response, right? They will integrate multiple data points from multiple security products into a unified platform. Trend Micro does one, Palo Alto does one, Sentinel one does one, right? So it will take multiple inputs to say, hey, by itself, a password lockout is not a problem. But password lockout coming from a new IP that I've never seen of before could be an issue. Let's check. That's an XDR. Okay. Now, see, we are going to continue to work in a hybrid world. We're going to continue work in a scenario where people will slowly less and less come to office, right? And for which they need more and more need access into the office, right? The old-fashioned way of get remoting in or using a VPN is a death knell. It is a guarantee for you to put your organization at risk, right? So more and more companies are coming up with what is called the zero trust security solutions, right? What does zero trust network mean? A zero trust network, or zero trust VPN means it says I don't trust you by default. Zero trust. Okay, so no user, no system, no network is trusted by default, and it you have to prove your identity and access at every level. These are called zero trust principles. So a lot of these zero trust security solutions will become more and more relevant, more and more important. Okay. We spoke about the cloud earlier in my presentation. So cloud security posture management. How secure is my cloud? Because today, see, earlier, 20 years ago, you had to be a big corporation to be able to buy a fancy server, put it in a data center. Okay, the next level was people who invested in that capital expense would then loan out or lease out spaces on that server to smaller companies. Today I don't need anything. All I need is a credit card or sometimes even a student ID. Google Cloud, Azure, AWS, there are dime a dozen cloud infrastructure providers where you could, for as little as a few rupees, get a server hosted online, which means you have a lot more cloud implementations. When you have a lot more cloud implementations, you need a lot more security posture management for the cloud. That's very critical. Okay, that's another place, another tool set, another area for your students to learn. There's something called SASE. Okay, SASE is actually an acronym, and it is Secure Access Service Edge. So it's actually SASE, but it's pronounced as SASE. Okay, so SASE solutions combine network security functions with WAN capabilities to protect the enterprise. Netscope is a SASE. Cisco has a product called Cisco Umbrella. It's a SASE. It's a cloud native product. So basically, think of it as protecting external facing assets of the firm. Right? You could be accessing your attendance and your HRMS system or your learning management system from home or from the mobile. That needs protection. Now, all of this requires something called an identity and access management solution. So an IAM solution will continue to be very, very critical for security operations, and for IT. Think of Azure Active Directory, think of Okta, think of Ping Identity. These will continue to remain. Okay. We spoke about XDR, the existing version, which is called EDR, which is endpoint detection and response, will remain. There is a human element to it, which is called then managed detection and response, and MDR, like a SOC. Those things remain. And then, of course, you've got DevSecOps. So developers, how do you integrate security into the software development lifecycle? So how do you help developers find and fix vulnerabilities in their code so that those don't become software products that will come with a liability that becomes expensive to fix later? So check marks, sync, a whole host of open source solutions and security practices will continue to stay very, very relevant, very, very important. Okay. Then of course there are threat intelligence platforms. They aggregate threat data from multiple sources to provide actionable intelligence for threats, right? So recorded future, anomaly. You will continue to, you could potentially build your own threat intelligence platform as long as you have the ability to aggregate threat data from multiple sources, right? Some of these come to mind. I hope I've been able to answer this.
So I think we have answered most of the questions. One last question from me. So I think
Mhm.
I remember I spoke to you about DSCI's report when we spoke earlier last month, which says that there's a huge potential for job openings and opportunities in Indian market for cybersecurity professionals. What is your outlook on that? Uh, since you are also a practitioner, you must be knowing some inside information. So if you can share something about the opportunities that's available.
So, I know we spoke about it, but I would completely agree. Right, the whole we know that the cybersecurity space is going to continue to grow. It is not going to change, um, and it's that's sort of redoing what you know what we've said all along. Uh, I mean, that's summarizing what we've done all along, right? Sorry, I got distracted, Kavya. There's a question here that we've not answered. Somebody had a question on CCNA.
Yes.
Yes. So a CCNA is a Cisco Certified Network Associate. It's a good starting point, not just for a cybersecurity professional, but also for a network professional, right? Remember, there are two separate things. We just spoke about maker and checker. So CCNA is an exam that Cisco provides. So you become good at network fundamentals, network access, IP connectivity. And A follows with NP, so you have CCNA and CCNP, Cisco Certified Network Associate, Cisco Certified Network Professional. You would understand any network area, right? So there's an official certificate guide. There is a key book called 31 Days Before Your CCNA exam. There's a lot of stuff on CBT nuggets or network chuck to do, and you get practice labs to do these things, right? So you could potentially from scratch clear a CCNA in 3 to 6 months, depending on the amount of time that you have. And there's a lot of video and online study forums for this stuff. Not so relevant for relevant and yet not relevant for cybersecurity, but what CCNA will do is it will help you teach, manage how to configure Cisco devices, how to set up routing protocols, how to configure VLANs and inter-VLAN routing. So the VLANs and inter-VLAN routing is critical for the cybersecurity part of things, but otherwise it's a network security. It's more of a network operations professional. IP addressing, subnetting, routing protocols like EIGRP or OSPF is what this would do. You could use, I think Pearson conducts the exam here, so you could just use the Pearson View website and register for the exam and just go ahead.
I have
Um,
just like the 31 days before, I've just copy pasted in the chat box. If
yeah,
someone wants to look at it, they can.
perfect. Thank you.
And
Coming
one,
back to your question, Kavya.
yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
I had really got distracted with
No problem. Please.
you were saying before we got to CCNA.
So I was also going to say that DSA runs a program for girl students who are in the age of 18 to 24 on basics of cybersecurity called Cyber Siksha. I have dropped the link of that program here. So if there are any underprivileged students in your colleges, especially girl students, they can benefit from this course. I just dropped the link so professors can refer their students on that. Yeah, yeah, please, Anand. Please can.
I'm happy to take any other questions, Kavya. Or
Okay. So if there are any other questions, we will just wait for a moment and just take it. You can raise your arms and you can also like speak up. So even if you are not able to chat, you can just raise your hand and ask a question, or else we will conclude the session. I think Anand has taken quite a lot of time to
no,
uh,
I
answer
Like,
questions, because that's also important, right? Instead of just having a long session. So there's one other question about Fortinet certification.
again, like Cisco, Fortinet certifications are from Fortinet. See, these are embedded by, these are great starting points for students, right? Fortinet has some multiple tracks. It's got a network security expert track. It's got a network security associate track. I believe those guys call it NSC 1, 2, 3, right? And uh, see, fundamentally all of them teach you similar stuff. Network professionals, prepare you to be a better network professional. If you know that you're going to work in an environment that has Fortinet firewalls and gateways, do the Fortinet exam. If you think that, hey, I don't know, 90% of the organizations use Cisco products because they're more prevalent and larger in the market, do a Cisco certification. But they're all designed, no education is wasted ever. So all of them are designed to make you a better network professional. Where, what else?
I think there are no other questions. Uh, Thank you so much, Anand, for taking out time from your schedule and answering all these questions. I also thank the participants for coming up with interesting questions to keep the session flowing. So thank you all so much for joining us today. If there are any questions further to this and you would like them to be addressed, please feel free to drop an email to me. I can connect you with Anand. Um, I'm just dropping my email. So that you can connect with us anytime. We can take this forward as well in future in case you have any queries. So thank you again. Thank you all. We will conclude the session. Thank you, Anand. We hope to see
Thank
you
you.
again in some other session. Uh,
Happy to. Thank you, Kavya, and thank you all the educators. Thank you for all the jobs that you do. Nandri, thank you.
Thank you so much.